Dr. Jazz.
Uh, I listened to the Soprano-Logues with Dave Liebman, and
Oh, okay.
I love it because it's when I think of soprano saxophone, it's like you and Dave are actually the people who always pop up,
Oh, cool, cool.
when I imagine the instrument. But I wanted to ask you where did the idea come from to do this one with Dave, and what does Dave mean for you as a obviously soprano saxophone player? I mean,
Well, I mean, when I first switched from the tenor saxophone to the soprano, Dave was certainly one of my biggest inspirations because
mm,
he's the only one I know,
yeah,
I think, in the history of jazz that has actually done that. And I think for a long time, he was putting himself out there exclusively as a soprano player. So he was always my role model. When I was going through this process. In fact, I remember someone jokingly called me a young lion's Dave Liebman some years ago. But I reached out to him like over the years, and we've had conversations, and there was always talks of us playing together. And I guess before this particular recording came about, we I'm not sure if we I don't think we had yeah we I don't think we had done any duo concerts, but we played in group settings.
mm,
I think the first time was I did a tribute to Steve Lacy that he was a part of.
okay.
And after that, he brought me on a few times for a couple of his projects. So we've certainly got our musical creative dialogue happening, certainly several years before this
Okay.
recording actually came about.
How did you approach this one? I mean, it's two soprano saxophones.
Yeah.
That's a delicate one.
Well, it's all improvised.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so And I guess what's great about playing with someone like Dave is that, I mean, number one, he has great musical instincts, and also he has a very strong musical voice. So when you're playing with him, there's not um this this need to
Mm,
be competitive. Because one of the great things about playing with someone who is an original is that their originality actually inspires you to try to be the best version of yourself.
mm,
Whereas with someone concept, I don't know, I shouldn't call it competitive, but basically their concept is basically showing how much they've studied.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you can hear how well they absorb their Coltrane, the Bird, the Sonny Rollins, and they sort of put it all together in a nice, pretty package. But when it goes deeper than that, it's I find it to be very inspirational.
Mm,
So playing with him in many ways was very easy. It would have been a lot more difficult had I played tried to play duo with, if you want to say, a peer who was sort of in that stage, maybe where they
yeah, I know what you
artistically
mean. Yeah.
as developed, but they had the chops. They were whipping out, the fast and hip licks and patterns. That that would have put me into a very different mind space. But when I'm playing with Dave, the only message I get is like, "Hey, man,
Music.
just be
Yeah,
you."
yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. I heard you also like in Smalls. I mean, I watched the stream with Reggie Nicholson and Mark Elias, and I love that. And because it's again so much different than without the rhythm section. Like, do you guys have a plan to record something with the band also?
Um, Not really.
Hmm.
I haven't really put a lot of emphasis in recording recently.
Yeah.
You know, I guess the reason is I I feel with the way that my concept is developing as someone who's pursuing an experimental or improvised music path, I feel like this the statement actually gets made live. You know,
Hmm.
it's interesting when I'm playing over tunes or just playing music that requires numerous rehearsals to get together. Oftentimes, the recording tends to be the best representative of
Yeah.
that work because nowadays I don't know if you've dealt with this, but like people don't even really record like entire tracks anymore. It's like okay, let's put together the A section. All right, let's do another A section. All right, let's see if we can put together a B section, and then it's so you don't
Seriously?
even
Okay.
really get.
Okay. I haven't done that. I mean, I try not to.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, I've
Oh
I've
shit.
ordered a CD. Not I made a CD with someone not too long ago,
Yeah.
and literally, it was.
Oh
I
wow.
don't. I don't think we ever played the piece in its
Wow.
entirety. That we certainly didn't record it in its entirety.
Wow.
So, sometimes when you're dealing with more structured compositions, the recording is the best representative of that work. But with improvised and sort of experimental music, I found that the just doing it live, it's like it's already a very strong statement.
Hmm.
So I guess, so I've been thinking about like maybe why I haven't even spent a lot of emphasis recording because
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Yeah.
every time I do many of the gigs that I do get recorded live in or uploaded to YouTube
Yeah.
or whatever various sites, but then it becomes a musical statement. And sometimes if someone happens to make a sort of a high quality
Hmm.
audio recording to go with the video, I might put out the audio recording.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to figure out just how to deal with the music sort of in a medium, at least a recorded medium that I feel is best suited. But it's something I do think about. But again, I feel the strong musical statements are constantly being made and documented. So I almost feel like, well,
Hmm.
that's already recorded, So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I don't really pursue the traditional or conventional recording route as often as I maybe was doing
Yeah. In the
before.
past, yeah, you were definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess because back then when I first started playing solo,
Yeah.
the documentation of those particular songs, was the recording. But now it's not. Now the live performances are the best documentation.
Hmm. Yeah. At least record those. I think it's nice for fans of music, including myself, that since you cannot be on a live performance, at least it's captured that we get to listen to the music, or the fans and the lovers of the music. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I mean,
important.
there's a ton of stuff up on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
I just
yeah.
I just played a duet duo concert with Josh Sinton.
Wow. Yeah.
We played at the Downtown Music Gallery
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
as a part of Stephen Gauchi's
Hmm.
improvised music series. And so he
Wow.
always records the gigs. So he sent me a link the other day and, I listened to it. Like, oh, wow, this came out nice. But then, it's a statement. So it's like,
Yeah.
so I don't necessarily feel like, oh man, we need to go into the
A record.
studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the industry is anyway. It's like what's nowadays. What an album is like a valid question, almost like
Yeah.
it's
People don't, I mean, people are so used to getting music for free now.
yeah,
They don't, they don't want to pay for it. Oddly enough, I think if as far as moving physical product, you're better off releasing it on vinyl.
yeah, probably yeah,
And this is I think what I'll be doing in the future. Like right now, I'm not releasing any physical product, only digital
yeah,
downloads on on stream for like Bandcamp
Bandcamp is
and
cool, yeah, so far.
various streaming services. And then later on, I think I'll go back and release some of those recordings on vinyl.
Yeah,
You know, like,
that'll be cool.
I certainly have a plan to put the duo with Liebman out on vinyl.
That'll be beautiful, yeah.
I have a new recording coming out in November, a duo recording with John Michel Pilk.
Oh, really? Beautiful.
And that's on Bandcamp, but it will be certainly released on vinyl sometime in the near future.
Oh, fantastic. Super. Yeah, looking forward to this. You know, I love the records you've done as a leader, you know, so it's nice to document stuff. I think it's a nice thing for every artist. So yeah, cool. Good info.
Yeah.
Good news. But I wanted to ask you something. Like you mentioned Steve Lacy before, and you know, we talked about Dave Liebman, but you know, obviously you didn't start immediately on the soprano, but I don't know, I guess mid 80s, early 80s, who were your heroes that got you into this music? I mean,
Yeah, well, you know, when I first, you know, I guess started to come of musical age and started to realize I wanted to pursue, you know, a career as a jazz musician, you know, my idols are people like Sonny Rollins, Dexter Gordon, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Hank Mobley,
yeah.
Wayne. You know, so I was, you know, definitely that tenor lineage, and certainly some alto players as well, you know, were a big influence on just sort of my musical vision, and a lot of their ideas were an integral part of my musical vocabulary at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You also got to study, right? I've read with some of amazing players like Garzone and Billy Pierce and all these guys. Like,
Oh yeah, when I
how
was
was
at
that like?
Berkeley, oh, it was great. You know, look, actually, while I was at Berkeley, I had three teachers. The first was Andy McGee, and Andy was kind of like an old school swing player, and so he was great because he taught me how to practice, and you know, he taught me how to have a musical vision, and then learning how to put together the steps to realize it. So so he taught me how, like, when you practice, you know, you want to work on your technique to be able to play what you hear. To be able to, you want to work on your technique to play what you hear. You want to develop your ears to be able to hear what to play, and then he said you want to develop your vocabulary to actually have things to play, and then you want to listen to the masters so you can see how it should be done. So he laid it out very clearly for me, and so that helped me to develop very quickly. And then when I studied with Billy Pierce, you know, his thing was less about that, but it was more about giving you very concrete information. So it's just like, okay, learn this, and this will help you play over these changes. Learn this, and you know, this will help you in this type of musical setting. Practice this because this will develop this type of thing technically. So, you know, he had a very codified way of dealing with harmony, chord changes, and just music in general. So it was very helpful as far as my organization. And then for George Garzone, you know, his thing was more conceptual. You know, he was like, hey man, you got the bebop thing down, you have all of this other stuff. Now let's get creative with it. You know, you've learned all the rules. Now let's learn how to break them. So, you know, so I felt like the order, you know, that I studied, I guess chronologically, you know, worked out perfectly as just giving my level of development at the time that I was actually studying with those three teachers.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's beautiful. Like, how did you then, you know, going from Berkeley, decide to go to New York? What was the main trigger that you said, like, okay, I want to go there and try it?
Well, I guess, you know, Berkeley, was always just a pit stop, before going to New York. I mean that's how I perceived it, and I think that's how many of my peers
Yeah.
perceived it. Berkeley was where you went to get your act together, to make connections, and then get ready for New York. Berkeley was your preparation period.
Mm.
So it was just always without any fault that I would move to New York, after finishing Berkeley. Probably the biggest challenge was actually finishing Berkeley.
Wow, wow. Okay.
Because people, some of my classmates, started to leave and they were getting nice gigs. So you're just like, oh man, I want to hurry up and sort of get in there and get my piece of the pie too. I guess it started off with, I think, Danilo
Hmm.
Perez left. He started playing with I think it was John Hendricks, and then that started to lead to other things. And he would come back to visit. He was like, "Oh man, I've been playing with this person. We had traveled to this place, and oh man, so and so came to sit in. I met Chick Corea. It's like, oh man, I want to move to New York." And then, a lot of other people started to move. I think, Javon Jackson left. He started playing with Art Blakey and Jazz Messengers. Um, there were a few others that they started to, it's like they could no longer stay at Berkeley any longer to finish their degree because, they were getting called by the scene. So I was, just very anxious to so I can jump in there and be a part of it as well.
Mm. How was it for you when you first moved to New York? Like, what was the first gig that you got? I mean, and the first players you connected with?
It was interesting. It started off what looked like it was going to be, uh, a great, a great trip to New York, at least a great transition. Because I guess maybe within my first week or two, I got a call. I called Donald Harrison
Oh,
because
wow.
I had met him while I was in Boston, and he was always like, "Hey, man, when you get to New York, give me a call." So I actually called him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm in New York, so yeah, you hear anything, let me know." And he was like, "Hey, I'm so glad you called. I was just thinking about you. I was just telling Roy Haynes about you."
Oh, wow.
So he said, "Man, we're going over to Roy's house to play this Saturday. Are you around?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." So he was like, "Well, meet me at this place." So we all went. It was like me, Donald Harrison, Dave Kukowski,
Mm.
uh, James Denis,
Wow. Okay.
and Mark Whitfield. And so we all went to Roy's house on Long Island and just jammed all day and listened to him tell stories. So that was sort of like my first sort of foray into being in New York. And he was thinking about hiring me, but it didn't really work out. He felt, I was still a little green, I guess, to do his gig in that context. He said that, well, if it was like or a sextet, I would definitely use you. But he was like saying, in a quartet, I
Mm.
need someone just with a little more maturity. Because I guess in a quartet setting, you basically have to be prepared to be the leader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was not at that point. I mean, I just finished Berkeley. So I was still playing in the Art Blakey ensemble. Like, yeah, I just finished doing that like 3 months ahead, 3 months before. So I hadn't really, I understood that too. It wasn't like I was mad. I was like, oh well, thanks. I appreciate just the consideration, and I'll certainly take that to heart. But that just led to other things. It's like you start making the rounds. You go to jam sessions,
Mm.
people hear you, you exchange numbers, you get recommended for gig, do that gig, you meet other people, and things
Yeah.
happen. It's just like the networking. One thing leads to another, and before you know it, people are talking about you and getting calls, and you know you're making recording Next thing you know, on a tour, you know, it's all part of a journey.
What was your first tour, by the way, that you did?
The first tour actually started right before I moved to Berkeley. I'm sorry, right before I moved to New York. Like almost like a few weeks before graduation. Donald Brown, who was one of my teachers at Berkeley, said, "Hey, man, what are you doing over the summer?" I'm just practicing, saving money, preparing for the move to New York. And he was like, "Oh, man, well, I have something. I don't want to say what it is, but I think it's something that we're going to be interested in." So he kept me on pins and needles for a few weeks actually, and then it finally said, "Yeah, man, so Donald Byrd has put a band, and
Oh,
I
wow.
told him about you." And so yeah, so he wants to he has a tour, some tours set up over the summer. So man, if you were down, you definitely got the gig.
Wow.
So we played numerous festivals in the United States.
Wow.
We toured Europe for a bit, which was great because I think the very last gig I did on that tour, it was like one of those those festivals where there were just like a lot of American groups, and so a lot of them were checking out the gig, So afterwards, they, "Hey man, I haven't heard you before, where do you live?" I said, "I'm actually moving to New York." "Oh man, give me your number, call me when you get there." So that was sort of like a good sort of lead up or introduction, prep, for my
Yeah.
move to New York.
Wow.
But that was really my first tour with a major artist.
Wow. How was Donald like to you guys?
Oh,
He's
what
been
was
how was he as a band leader to you guys, Donald Byrd?
Oh, it was interesting. He was I think he was very much influenced by the leadership style of Miles Davis.
Mm.
There, it wasn't about him telling you what to do, or even him coming in with a clear vision of what the music should be or the band should be. It was sort of like, "Hey, what do you got for me? What are you working on? Have any tunes? Oh yeah, bring him in. Let's play them."
Okay.
So he was from that kind of Miles Davis, Art Blakey, style of leadership where it was about, teaching your side persons how to be leaders
Yeah.
rather than them coming in to say, "Okay, this is how it should be done." Because I found that way of leading tend to tend to come more from people who were my peers. Like like
Mm.
they were the ones who kind of came in and said, "Okay, here are the charts, and I need you to play like this."
Yeah, yeah.
The older cast, they just wanted to see what you had to bring to the table. So
Mm.
that was always very encouraging.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's good that you got to experience that. I mean, to play with the elders actually. So that's incredible. But how did you then end up in Terrence's Blanchard's band? I love that group, and how you
Oh,
played with him. I mean, this was also quite a major gig for you, right? When you
oh yeah,
came to New York.
absolutely. Yeah, that was probably my second major gig.
Hmm.
Uh, so I guess Terrence, from what I understand, he heard me at the jam session
Ah,
uh,
okay.
at, um, at the Blue Note because I used to run it occasionally. As I said, when I first got to New York, I was making a round. So, the Blue Note after hours session. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that session. At one time, it was run by Ted Curson. Uh,
Okay.
and so he was known for running it. And then eventually, the Harper brothers, Philip and Bernard Harper, took it over. And so that was kind of cool because they were of a younger generation.
Yeah.
So they were a little more inviting to younger people coming out. So, I connected with them. They like what I was doing, and they were, when they got busy, they would invite me to come and run it, and so I got a chance to, showcase what I do and meet people. And I think just one particular night, Terence happened to be there
Mm.
and was looking to start a new band. So we exchanged numbers, and he, when he had like this small tour lined up, he gave me a call and asked me did I want to make it.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay.
I made that tour, and I was pretty much with them for the next 4 or 5 years.
Wow. Yeah, it's like small occasions, right? The right person is at the right place when you play. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
quite incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why I always, even now, I kind of have to remind myself. It's I've never been a big like career centered or focused person. I just don't. I don't understand. I don't really understand the business. Like there are a lot of people who are on the business side who claim they know what they're doing, but they really don't. They
Mm.
they just happen to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Whatever they signed the right artist, whatever they were promoting happened to work, and they were able to reap the benefits of it. But if the truth is, if people knew what they were doing, they would be able to do it all the time, and they
Mm.
can't. They get their one hit, and then they don't get any more hits, which is proof they don't know. They don't really know what they're doing. I mean, in the sense that they can reproduce it.
Yeah, I know what
You
you
know,
mean.
so I mean, I guess for me, I don't really pretend to understand the business. I just do what I do. I just try to create music. I try to be cool with people. I put myself out there. I guess now because of social media, I put
Yeah.
myself out there more through those formats, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So I'm always posting stuff on Instagram. Whenever I have a new idea, you
Mm.
know, hey, let me record this and see what people think. So I'm always
Okay. Yeah.
making myself available and just being in touch with the music community, as a whole. So but other than that, I mean, I don't really have an understanding of the business as far as like, okay, how can I make this work for me? I don't know if you can. It's like sometimes you are the right person at the
Yeah.
right time for the right set of people. And that works in your favor. Like in the 90s, I was the right person for Terrence at that time. Like I haven't really got any type of major gig since. It's not like my playing has gotten worse.
Okay.
It's not like I've become a more horrible person who can't get along. It's just, I'm doing something different now, and it just, it connects in a different type of way. So I guess
Yeah.
for me, I don't try to I don't try to overthink it. It is what it is, and I show up to the gig and try to do the best I can, make a statement, and just let it be what it is, and then just kind of go home and
Yeah.
just keep it going. Because I think the most frustrating part about being a musician, or I think the way that musicians frustrate themselves, is like they always ask themselves the question of what next, because I like, for example,
It's heavy. Yeah.
or they would say now what, like I remember I would do gigs, and I would have the good fortune of having like the New York Times review it. So you do a gig, and then the New York Times writes this rave review. And so in my mind, I'm saying, okay, now what? Now what? But it's like, I've learned it's like nothing. It's like you did the gig, got a
Yeah.
review, and it was great. Move on.
Yeah.
Maybe down the road, uh, it might make sense, like, okay, now I can use this, but like, you're almost wasting your time trying to figure out sort of like how to parlay all of these things
Yeah.
into more opportunities. As they say, what is it? Hindsight is 2020. So it's easier after the fact to say, oh, okay, now I
Yeah.
understand the significance of that encounter was, or I understand what the significance of getting that review was, or the significance of playing at that particular place. Because you don't know why you're doing it. It's not clear yet. So
Mm,
I've learned to not even try to know. It's best just to be in the moment and just appreciate just having done the gig and
mm,
having made that musical exchange, having had that musical encounter, and just move on with your life.
mm. Yeah. I mean, appreciate the gig. That's so important, I think. Just to cherish the moment that you're there, that you got the gig and play it and enjoy it. I think we're missing many
Yeah,
bands on that, like, because like you said, we're thinking like, shit, how do I get a next gig? How do I do that? But just to be there, I think that's important.
yeah, yeah. It's like it shouldn't be about it shouldn't be about any more than what it is.
Mm, true. It's nicely put, yeah. Yeah. How did, you mentioned that Donald Byrd kind of
Mhm.
wanted to show you how to be a band leader. And how did Sam I Am happen and this story with Crisscross? And you were still like
I'm
24,
just
right?
gonna yeah. Let me see. Sorry to disappear on you.
Oh, no
I
worries.
was okay. Sorry. I needed to plug in my
Oh yeah,
computer
sure.
was running low. Um, how did the crisscross um, CD recording happen? I was recommended. I think at the time, Benny Green
Okay.
was recording
Yeah.
Jerry Teakins, who's the owner of the label, and Jerry Teakins. At that time, I think he had become frustrated with recording older musicians.
Yeah.
Because he was saying, some of them are unreliable. They were not necessarily taking it as seriously. They weren't necessarily coming to the date prepared. And he felt like he just got better results when he recorded younger musicians because he felt like they were more hungry and more eager to prove themselves.
Mm,
So he was just recording a lot of younger
yeah.
musicians. So of course, he has Benny Green. Who's new in town. So Benny recommended me. Um, I don't know if he called me or he left message for Benny to have me call him, but either way, we had a dialogue happening, and then eventually he said, "Hey, I'm coming to New York, whatever, next month. Would you like to do a date for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And then just said, put together the personnel, and then yeah, we'll make it happen.
Did you feel nervous
So
becoming a band leader, or I mean, or
oh yeah, terrified.
mm,
I mean, because keep in mind too. I mean, I wasn't really playing with my peers per se. I had people that I looked up to, like Mulgrew Miller,
yeah? Oh man, yeah.
Steve Nelson, Billy Drummond, and the only one I would say that was my peer on the date was James
Yeah.
Enos. Everyone else, they were people that I consider to be elders. So, it was hard to exude, but so much confidence, when you're with those players. So, you know, I guess as far as me being a leader, basically it was just like I knew that they had their stuff together. So my focus was just make sure I took care of what I needed to take care of.
Mm,
It wasn't a matter of trying to, uh, an issue of you know, trying to get them to play in a certain way. It was just like, hey, I brought Mulgrew Miller to be
oh man, sure.
Mulgrew Miller,
Yeah,
Steve Nelson to be Steve Nelson, Billy Drummond to be Billy Drummond, and James Genius to be James Genius. So yeah, so I just brought in tunes that I thought that I could sound good on, and I thought, they would have fun playing. So
yeah,
that's basically, you know, how I went about it, and I guess as far as me being a leader, I didn't necessarily think of it in that way. It was just kind of a recording or a performance that I was organizing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
more so, more so than I was leading. Now, when I got into you know other groups down the road, then I did take on more of a leadership role because then I went in, you know, trying to pursue a musical vision,
Yeah.
which is that's a very different story.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. I mean, especially about global unity, but like uh, when you approach this first record, you wrote some beautiful music there, like Brooklyn Nights and that one
Mhm.
in the vein of Train. I love that one. It's like 12 minutes or 11 minutes, and it's woo. But how did you approach writing back then, or even now? I mean, if you still compose, like, what's your process there? Where do you start? Or
Well, I'll always start with a melody. I guess
yeah, that's yeah,
I was always very much influenced by Wayne Shorter's compositional style, where he would have um, one note. He always had a very simple melody, but he always had harmonic
yeah,
complexity underneath the simplicity. So I always used that as a model for writing. So I would have this very nice melody, and then that could stand on its own. And then I would just write chords
mm,
that basically would take the ear into unusual places. So that was kind of what I was thinking because when I wrote tunes, I never really thought about bebop changes so much.
hmm,
It's always about uh, really just finding different what's the word I'm thinking about? Different functions, harmonic functions for the
yeah,
note. Like if I was
I know what you mean.
let's say I wrote a melody that had an A had an A for four measures.
Yeah,
I was oh man, so that A could be a sharp,
exactly. Yeah,
of the E flat, and then like, oh, then it could be the sharp five of the D flat major, and then it could be the nine of the G minor
yeah.
seven,
For instance,
and
yeah.
then it could be the flat nine, of the A flat seven. So I was always kind of thinking along those lines. I mean, and that's sort of how I approach composition.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, like the function of notes, and I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, beautiful. Uh, how did you? You mentioned you had a clear vision, and I think global unity is like you as a band leader. I love that project. And how did you decide to go that direction? And investigating all these different influences and kind of gelling it into your own language with your tunes and
Yeah. Well, it started from it stemmed from me having switched to the soprano. When I switched to the soprano, one of the things I noticed was that some of the my vocabulary that I had honed as a tenor saxophonist didn't necessarily transfer
yeah,
over to the soprano as easily as I thought it would. And so I was trying to, I found I had to develop a vocabulary that was more in tune to the intrinsic sound of the instrument. And so what I found was that a lot of times music that was improvised that actually came from non-Western cultures
Mm,
seemed to work really well
yeah.
on the soprano, and some of those instruments from a timbral level seem to have some overlap with the soprano. So I always use certain those types of instruments, as a form of inspiration. Like I love like the Chinese musette.
Mm,
I used to love the Shanai from India, um, like the shakuhachi flute,
yeah.
from Japan. So like all of these different instruments, just on a timbral level, I could relate it to the soprano, and so that also got me checking out different styles of music and also different styles of improvisation. So not just only looking at improvisation from a hard bop perspective, but really almost kind of like a multicultural perspective.
Mm. How did you decide to go for the soprano, actually? I mean, what was the main trigger to do that, Pat?
Well, I think one of the reasons I switched to the soprano was I just had this period of time where I was very frustrated with my tenor saxophone sound.
Mm,
Like as saxophonists, uh, as many saxophonists do, I was changing mouthpieces, constantly changing reeds, then I started changing horns. It just nothing just seemed to bring me any satisfaction. And then, I had a gig where it was going to be mostly soprano, and it was like the gig was like a couple of months away, and I was like, oh, this will be a great opportunity to really get my soprano together because at the time I really wasn't doing a lot, and
mm,
so I actually had the free time to do it, to devote time to the instrument. And so during this process of just spending more and more time playing it, you know, I realized that I was able to get to a type of sonic clarity on the instrument almost instantaneously
mm,
that I was not able to get to on the tenor. And so I just felt like, man, there's something here. And then, and then I, it just, it's almost like an epiphany. I just felt, man,
mm,
if I don't, and I, if I don't like really pursue this now, I would never pursue it. And so I just, bit the bullet and just jumped in with both feet and said, you know what, I'm just gonna put the tenor aside and just let's see what's here. And
oh,
so that started that particular journey. I can't say that I would have the
interesting.
courage to nowadays, but back then, I didn't really have a lot to lose. I didn't my financial overhead was very low. You know, I was single, I didn't have a family, I didn't have a lot of bills. I was in a place where if I was going to make that type of sacrifice,
Mm,
I was I I could do it at that moment in time. And I'm glad I did because I certainly couldn't do that nowadays. I there are too many people who rely on me to be
sure, sure.
very to have a very consistent paycheck.
No, but sure, yeah. No, but still, it's interesting choice even back then because you did like after all like the years with Terence and you did your own record and
Yeah.
it's still
Oh yeah.
quite a step.
Oh yeah. It wasn't. It well, it wasn't all roses
Yeah,
and
yeah, sure.
people kissing my ring. I got a lot of pushback. I lost quite a few friends. People in my inner circle.
Mm,
Who liked what I was doing on tenor, and they were very upset. When I was when they realized whatever it was I was bringing to their music that was going to happen anymore.
mm.
So they were very upset about my decision, and some of them have not spoken to me since.
Oh
I
wow.
don't know if I don't know if they're angry, but I just think, you know, we all have our path.
Sure.
We all have this journey that you're pursuing, and if you're both traveling this path and another person goes here and you're still going here, you know,
Sure.
you're just not going to connect very often.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it stemmed from that more so than being angry, even though they may have been angry in the beginning, but I don't think they stayed angry for 20
Sure.
years.
Sure. Sure. No,
then
makes
it's not
sense.
about, then it's not about the saxophone anymore.
Yeah.
If you're angry for that period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Exactly. No, but how did the monk abstractions happen? And I mean, you went then even further. I think from like 2008 or even up till to now, like you're the solo saxophone sound for me when I don't know why, but like, so how did you decide to go to the solo soprano saxophone path, and how was that
Oh,
like for you in the
well,
beginning? I mean,
yeah. Well, that's interesting because I guess once I put together the group Global Unity, and
mhm,
that was sort of like my first sort of band as a leader, as a soprano saxophonist. And that group, as rewarding as it was, had its challenges. The big challenge was that I wasn't hiring necessarily instruments, but I was really hiring these different personalities
mm,
that just happened to play these exotic instruments. But the problem with that way of leading a band is that when somebody can't make a gig,
yeah,
it really just throws off the whole sound. And so, I would have these situations where I finally got a great gig and paid a lot of money and it was going to be a good opportunity. And then half the band can't make it.
that's it, yeah,
So I just I just got tired of that kind of frustration, when I started getting a lot of subs and then the sound just got
yeah,
further away from what I was envisioning. So I just abandoned that whole sound, and I always said, if I put if I ever develop another concept, it's going to be something that is soprano centered and something where I'm calling the musical shots,
mm,
where almost where I don't the per whom I'm playing with doesn't necessarily really matter because what is making it is my sound. So I've always felt like I needed to develop that type of concept. So that's when I discovered um, this Steve Lacy record. The name is escaping me at the moment. It was something he recorded when he came back to New York in the 1970s after living in Paris for a
Paris, yeah,
while.
yeah,
I think it was one of those concerts that was a part of the loft scene. So anyway, it was like a two CD recording, and it was just soprano,
mm,
and I never heard solo saxophone in that way, where it was really like a brand new format. I was like, wow, I think what I'm doing will work perfectly in this format.
yeah,
So started listening to other folks play solo, and then it was through Lacey that I discovered uh, how well suited Monk's music is,
mm-hmm,
not only soprano, but also really solo soprano. So through Lacey, I discovered how to use Monk's music. And then in the process of studying, I guess, the concept of solo saxophone, that led me to study extended
techniques,
techniques,
yeah,
and which eventually led to preparing the saxophone. So it all sort of culminated, I
mm,
think, on the album Monk Abstraction. Because even during that time, I had written compositions, but I've always been one of these people where, no matter how experimental my concept is, I still want people to get it.
Mm,
I still I want to connect with people. I play a lot of experimental music, and in some ways, I envy some of those musicians that I play with because many of them like they don't have that desire. It's like that's connecting in that really deep
mm,
personal way. It's not up there. What's at the top of their list of this is what I want to play and I'm going to play it regardless. But for me, I have that thing too where, I certainly have my musical vision, but I still want to connect with people. I still want them to be able to relate to what I'm doing. So I
mm.
thought, by channeling, these experimental concepts that I was working with, through the music of Monk, I thought it would be something that was very relatable, So, so and it seemed to work out. I think it was received well, and
Yeah,
also I like how it turned out musically as well.
yeah, it's a beautiful record. I mean, even later when you added Ellington and did all that stuff, like it's so beautiful. Just, I mean, the soprano is such a nice sound. It's still quite underrated in the realm of jazz, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's such a beautiful sounding instrument. Yeah. How was the first solo concert for you, like when you played it? I mean, to be alone on stage, do you remember that? How did you prepare for that?
Um, my solo concerts did not go very well in the beginning. I mean, there would be moments where things went well, but I think the problem was I had so many pieces that I needed to prepare for the concert. So if I made a mistake, it killed the momentum.
Mm,
And so I guess I didn't prepare enough for it. I guess I didn't really want to get into a thing where I'm preparing like a classical position where I'm just spending hours and hours and hours on a particular piece that's trying to get it perfect. I always wanted to have a certain looseness to it, but it was just too inconsistent.
mm,
So it wasn't until I started to get more into just the whole concept of free improvisation and not just doing solo concerts with pieces that I
mm,
wrote for solo saxophone. Because then it was getting into more of a classical aesthetic.
mm.
But when I started to go on stage literally with no agenda and just improvise, that's when I started to discover my rhythm. That's when I discovered my flow. Then what I started to be able to do was just I could weave in and out.
Yeah,
I could improvising, and then maybe I'll hint at a tune, and I'll go into something else. That was like I learned rather than having these pieces that were sort of woven together to make up a musical set. I focus more on just creating a stream of consciousness.
yeah, yeah. It's like I listened 2 years ago to Evan Parker solo gig, and it was exactly what you're, you know, saying now. It was just like, man, wow, blown away. 50 minutes of, I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's so I
Yeah.
mean, so yeah, so my solo performances in the beginning, did not go well. I mean, back to what I was saying earlier, when I said that, the recording was the best representative of the work. Because in the beginning, when I would make solo records, first two or three takes would be horrible. So, you have to keep doing this. Okay, finally got one. All right, now let's go to the next one. Or then you have to fix it in the editing process.
Mm, Sure.
It was a lot of work to get it together, but now, I don't need any editing. It's just it is what it is. So that's what I'm trying to get to. This type of I guess uh, this this the flawlessness that comes from not having
Mm.
agenda, the flawlessness that comes from there not being a right or wrong, the flawlessness that comes from just having the music be what it is.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. Yeah. True. Uh, Sam, not to take too much of your time, just like what is still in the schedule for you for the upcoming months? I mean, do you have what are the gigs or some sideman gigs or?
Yeah, I have quite a few things. Trying to think. I know. What is it? Next week? I always have to go to
Sure.
my website. I can never remember anything. I think at this point I'm so busy that it's hard for me to retain information. Like when I only had like a couple of gigs, it was very easy to
Sure.
say, "Oh, I'm playing here and I'm playing there," and that was kind of like the end of it. But now, trying to think. What is today? Well, last Saturday I played at the Downtown Music Gallery with as part of Stephen Gauchi's series with Josh Sinton, and then I'm playing at next week. I'm playing at Never Ending Books with Joe Morris,
Oh, really?
guitarist. Yeah.
Wow. Oh
So
man, that's gonna be killing.
yeah. So we're playing in New Haven.
He's gonna play
So
guitar or drums or bass
oh,
or all.
I know there's already a bass player, so yeah, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure he's playing guitar.
Oh man, that's killing. I hope someone will record that video.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. So I've done quite a few gigs with Joe.
I love Joe, man. Woo,
Oh
okay.
yeah, Joe is a big inspiration.
Terrific. Wow.
And then I think I'm playing again um, in November with the Mark Morris Dance Company in Auburn, Alabama. It's a it's a project I've been working with for the past 4 or 5 years. It was
Wow.
uh, they reimagined the Sergeant Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album.
Hmm.
Ethan Iverson wrote the music and
Wow.
arranged the music. So I'm a part of that group. So we've been
Wow.
playing for several
Interesting.
years. We're playing at um in Auburn University November 14th, and then November 16th, I'm actually playing with Joe Morris again at Never Ending Books with another group,
Beautiful.
and then
Wow.
I'm playing the main drag. Oh, I almost forgot. I mean, before that, on November 3rd is going to be the release of the duo record with John Michel Pilk, which is called Cosmic Unconsciousness
Hmm.
Unplugged.
Are you playing improvised or tunes with Jean-Michel?
It's all improvised.
Improvised. Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
Actually, what's the unique thing about this recording? Like, you would never guess that any of those tunes are improvised. Like they all sound. I mean, that's not correct. There are three standards that we do.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like very common standards too. I mean, we do "Take the A Train," "All the Things You Are,"
Oh, wow. Okay.
and "Solitude." And so, but we're just really pushing the envelope, with it. Um, and so, yeah, so that's coming out on uh, November 3rd.
Beautiful.
And I guess for those people who are listening, we're also going to have a listening party on November 1st on Bandcamp. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
just, I'll be sending out a notice. So just have people come and listen and comment on the recording. So I'm very excited about that. I just got word that Downbeat is supposed to review it in
Oh,
their
super.
January issue. So I'm very curious to see how it's received. But yeah, I'm very proud of that particular recording.
Beautiful. Super. Do you have any plans of coming to Europe also, or?
No, it's interesting. I don't really have any connections in Europe. It's like I haven't. Europe is an interesting. It's a tricky sort of network to get into because I feel in order to work in Europe almost feel like you need to first be working with someone who's already working in Europe, and then you become part of that network, and then you made those connections, and then whatever, you get to know the promoters, you get to know the club owner, and you come with your own band. So for me, I mean, just kind of coming into it cold, making cold calls, I think it's a little more challenging to sort of to get your feet in. And plus, too, I'm pretty busy. I have a lot going on in New York, so I don't really have
need.
I don't really have the time to pursue it in that way, because I guess maybe like 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, I just made a conscious decision that I'm not going to invest a lot of time into getting gigs and that type of stuff. And as I said, I'm just going to focus on just what I can control. I can control to a certain extent the music. I can control my thinking, my health. So I'm not really so much worried about it. It's like trying to book things, but things happen. I'm still working. In some ways, I feel not working, pursuing those things. I'm actually working more. I'm not really going to Europe, but that's fine too. I mean, I don't necessarily feel a need to go to Europe per se, because it's a little bit different. I think New York has changed a bit, because I think New York has become maybe more tolerant of maybe experimental music. I think there are more venues now. There used to just be a handful, but now they're just in Greenpoint, in Williamsburg. I mean, they're just places that are popping up all the time. So as American jazz musicians, we don't necessarily feel we have to go to Europe just to have a place to play.
Gigs,
Which I don't know if that was always the case, and I think that was the time. I've always felt like, Europe was where you went to build your audiences for that type of music, but I'm not necessarily sure it's necessarily the case now.
Interesting point. Yeah, but probably you're right. Yeah, definitely. But cool.
I'm not sure if I ask you where are you?
I'm in Slovenia in Europe, so I'm kind of like 2 hours south of Vienna, like 1 hour south from Graz, between Zagreb and Vienna, Graz there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to Slovenia. I mean, I've played with people from Slovenia, but I've never been there. I mean, it's certainly a part of the world I would like to.
Yeah, man, definitely. Drop me a line if you have plans. So we have guest room here, so you can stay here. So
okay.
But cool, man. But Sam, I will give you a nice Saturday. So thanks for taking the time and sharing some of these thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, appreciate you asking me.